This is incomprehensible.
I can help translate those words.
Billionaire CEO panics without a translator until pregnant poor girl saves the day in 1 second. When the most powerful man in the room suddenly can't speak the language, the last person anyone expects, a broke, pregnant girl, steps in and saves his billion-dollar deal in 1 second. Before we begin the beautiful story, please subscribe. It's free, and it makes my day 100% better. Also like and comment where you're watching from. I would be glad to know this story goes as far as Canada, all of the United States of America, Australia, Africa, and even the United Kingdom. So let me know where you're watching from on comment section. I pray may the good God Almighty bless and preserve you all and your family. Amen. Let's begin. The boardroom on the 47th floor of Chen Industries Tower gleamed with steel and glass, reflecting the panic in Mark Davidson's steel-gray eyes. Outside, Manhattan stretched beneath them like a kingdom he'd built with his own 2 hands. But inside this room, his empire was crumbling. Mr. Davidson, the Chinese delegation will be here in 7 minutes. His assistant's voice cracked with the weight of desperation they all felt. Mark's translator, the one person who could navigate the intricate dialect of Mandarin mixed with obscure business terminology that Mr. Wei exclusively used, had collapsed an hour ago. Ambulance. Hospital. Gone. $300 million hung in the balance. A merger that would catapult Chen Industries into the Asian market, securing his legacy, saving 12,000 jobs, and proving to everyone who'd ever doubted him that Mark Davidson wasn't just another trust fund CEO coasting on his father's name. But without someone who could understand Mr. Wei's specific regional dialect, a rare combination of Cantonese and Mandarin with technical jargon, the deal would die before dessert was served. Sir, we've called every translation service in the city. No one has someone available who speaks. I know what they speak. Mark's fist hit the mahogany table, making water glasses tremble. His perfectly tailored suit suddenly felt like a straitjacket. Everything he'd worked for, every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every relationship he'd destroyed in pursuit of this moment, all of it about to evaporate because of one medical emergency. His phone buzzed. 23 messages from board members. His father's name appeared at the top of the list, and Mark could already hear the disappointment, the told you so dripping from every word. Cancel it, Mark heard himself say, the words tasting like poison. Cancel the dinner. Mr. Davidson, if we cancel now, Mr. Wei will take it as an insult. We'll never get another chance. I know that. His voice echoed off the windows. The sunset painted the city in shades of amber and crimson, beautiful and terrible, like watching something precious burn. Do you think I don't know what this means? The door opened. His head of security stepped in, looking uncomfortable. Sir, there's a situation downstairs. Unless someone down there speaks fluent Cantonese Mandarin hybrid with business terminology, I don't care if the building's on fire. It's a pregnant woman, sir. She's refusing to leave the lobby. Says she needs to speak with you about security problem. Handle it. Mark turned away, pressing his palms against the cold glass. Below, people moved like ants, all of them with their small problems, their simple lives. None of them knowing that the man in the tower was about to lose everything. She says she can help with your Chinese problem. The words hung in the air like a lifeline thrown into dark water. Mark spun around. What? The pregnant woman downstairs. She overheard the security team talking about the emergency. She says she's fluent in the exact dialect you need. For a moment, hope flickered in Mark's chest. Then reality crashed down. A pregnant woman wandered into my building and just happens to speak the one dialect in the world I need right now. This is Manhattan, not a fairy tale. She's probably just, sir, she spoke to our Chinese receptionist. Emily says the woman's pronunciation is perfect, native level, and she knew specific business terms that Emily had never heard before. Mark's mind raced. 5 minutes until the delegation arrived. This was insane, irresponsible. possibly a scam or worse. He should throw her out, cancel the meeting, accept defeat like a rational person. But Mark Davidson hadn't built an empire by being rational. "Bring her up," he said. "Now." The elevator doors opened 90 seconds later, and Mark's world tilted on its axis. She was small, especially compared to the security guard looming behind her. Her simple cream-colored dress was clean but worn, the fabric straining slightly over the curve of her pregnant belly. She couldn't have been more than 23, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that held something Mark rarely saw anymore. Genuine determination mixed with bone-deep fear, but she wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of something else entirely. "Mr. Davidson." Her voice was steady despite the way her hands clenched the strap of her ancient, battered purse. "My name is Faith Martinez. I heard you need someone who speaks Cantonese Mandarin business hybrid. I can do that. I can help you." Mark studied her like he studied every business proposal, looking for the catch, the angle, the lie. How does a... He caught himself before saying something he'd regret. "How did you learn such a specific dialect?" "I lived in Guangzhou for 4 years. Worked as a translator for a manufacturing firm." She met his eyes without flinching. The owner was from Beijing originally but grew up in Hong Kong. His business terminology mixed both dialects. "I was his personal translator until..." Her hand moved unconsciously to her belly. "Until you got pregnant." A flash of pain crossed her face, there and gone. "Until the company relocated and I couldn't afford to follow them. I've been back in New York for 3 months. And just happened to wander into my building today. I've been applying for positions here for 6 weeks. Your HR department sends very polite rejection emails." There was no bitterness in her voice, just fact. "I was here today for an interview with a restaurant down the street. I heard your security team talking about the emergency. I thought maybe this was my chance to prove I could be valuable." Mark's assistant appeared at his shoulder, whispering urgently, "Sir, the delegation is in the parking garage. 2 minutes." Every instinct Mark had told him this was wrong. You don't hire pregnant translators off the street. You don't gamble $300 million on someone you met 90 seconds ago. You don't, but what choice did he have? "Tell me something in the dialect," Mark demanded. "Something technical." Faith didn't hesitate. A stream of fluid Chinese poured from her mouth, the tones rising and falling with the natural rhythm of someone who'd lived the language, not just stuttered it. Mark didn't understand a word, but he recognized authenticity when he heard it. His Chinese receptionist, Emily, had followed Faith up from the lobby. Her eyes were wide. "Sir, she just explained the concept of vertical market integration using specific terminology that I only learned in graduate school. Her accent is, it's perfect. Better than perfect." Mark made the decision in half a heartbeat. "What do you want?" Faith blinked. "I'm sorry." "Your price. Name it. What do you want for tonight?" "I want a job." The words came out strong and clear. "A real one. Not just tonight. I want a position as a translator on your staff. Benefits. Healthcare. Security. You're pregnant." "I'm aware." Steel entered her voice. "Which is exactly why I need this. I'm not asking for charity, Mr. Davidson. I'm asking for a chance to prove I'm the best translator you'll ever find. Give me tonight. If I can't handle it, I'll walk away and never bother you again. But if you can, we'll talk about employment." Mark extended his hand. "Deal." Her hand was smaller than his, but her grip was firm. "Deal." "Good. Because Mr. Wei just walked into the building, and if you screw this up, we both lose everything." For the first time since entering his world, Faith smiled. It was small, exhausted, and a little bit desperate, but there was something else there too, hope. Then I guess we'd better not screw it up. Mark led her toward the private dining room, his mind already racing through 1,000 scenarios, 1,000 ways this could end in disaster. He didn't know this woman. Didn't know if she was a con artist, a corporate spy, or just someone desperate enough to lie her way into his building. But as they walked down the corridor toward the future, something strange happened. For the first time in years, Mark Davidson felt something other than the cold calculation of business. He felt curious. Who was Faith Martinez? Why was a pregnant woman with apparently extraordinary skills wandering around Manhattan with no job and no prospects? And why did something about the fear he'd seen in her eyes feel so familiar? The dining room doors opened. Mr. Way stood flanked by his attorneys and advisors, his weathered face unreadable in that way Mark had learned meant the man was already irritated. Mr. Way, thank you for your patience. Mark's smile was practiced, professional, hiding the chaos underneath. I apologize for any confusion. May I introduce Faith Martinez, your translator for this evening? Mr. Way's eyes moved to Faith, skepticism evident in every line of his posture. Faith stepped forward, her hand resting gently on her belly, and spoke. What came out of her mouth was like music, fluid, respectful, perfectly toned. Mark watched as Mr. Way's expression shifted from skepticism to surprise to something that might have been approval. The old man responded, his rapid-fire dialect filling the room. Faith translated without missing a beat, her English as flawless as her Chinese. Mr. Way says he's impressed by your foresight in hiring someone who understands proper dialect. He says it shows respect for his culture and attention to detail. He looks forward to a productive evening. Mark felt the tension in his shoulders ease just slightly. Maybe, just maybe, this would work. As they moved to the table, Faith stumbled slightly, her hand shooting out to catch the chair. Mark's hand was there in an instant, steadying her. Their eyes met. That moment, Mark saw past the professional facade, past the brave smile. He saw exhaustion, pain, desperation hidden behind determination, and he wondered what kind of story had led Faith Martinez to his door. He wondered what she was running from. Most of all, he wondered why he suddenly cared. The dinner began. $300 million hung in the balance. And somewhere between the appetizer and the main course, Mark Davidson's carefully controlled world was about to change forever. Because Faith Martinez wasn't just a translator, she was a mystery wrapped in secrets, standing between him and disaster, carrying a future in her belly that she protected like a warrior guarding treasure. And before the night was over, Mark would learn that sometimes the most important translations aren't between languages, they're between hearts. The dinner was going. Perfectly, too perfectly, Mark watched as Faith navigated the complex negotiation with the grace of someone who'd been born to do this. Every idiom translated with cultural accuracy, every business term rendered precisely, every subtle shift in Mr. Way's tone captured and conveyed. She wasn't just translating words. She was translating intention, emotion, the unspoken currents that ran beneath every conversation. Mr. Way was impressed. Mark could see it in the way the old man leaned forward, engaged in a way he rarely was. The deal was happening. After months of preparation, after nearly losing everything, it was actually happening, and then Faith's face went white. It happened so fast that Mark almost missed it. One moment she was translating a complex clause about market share, the next her hand pressed against her stomach and her words stumbled mid-sentence. Faith. Mark's voice was low enough that only she could hear. I'm fine, she whispered, but her voice shook. She turned back to Mr. Way, forcing her smile back into place, continuing the translation. But Mark had learned to read people the way others read books, and Faith's pages were screaming alarm point. 10 minutes later, during a lull while documents were being reviewed, Faith excused herself to the restroom. She walked steadily, professionally, every step controlled. Mark waited 30 seconds before following. He found her in the corridor, leaning against the wall, her breathing shallow and quick. Her hand pressed against her lower back, and even from where he stood, Mark could see she was trembling. You're not fine. I said I'm fine. Her voice was tight with pain. The dinner isn't over. Mr. Wei is about to discuss the final terms, and if I'm not there, if you're not healthy, there is no deal. Mark pulled out his phone. I'm calling a doctor. No. The word came out sharp, desperate. Faith pushed away from the wall, standing straighter despite the obvious cost. Please. I just need a minute. I've been having Braxton Hicks contractions all week. They're uncomfortable but harmless. I just need to breathe through it and I'll be fine. You're 7 months pregnant. 8. The correction was automatic. And I know my body. I know what I can handle. Do you? Mark stepped closer, searching her face. Because from where I'm standing, you look like you're about to collapse. I can't collapse. Something raw entered her voice. I can't afford to collapse. Do you know what happens if I fail tonight? If I walk away from this dinner early because I had some contractions and couldn't tough it out? You get medical attention and I lose my chance. Faith's eyes met his, and Mark saw something that made his chest tighten. Pure, undiluted fear. This is it for me, Mr. Davidson. This is my last shot. I'm 8 months pregnant with no job, no health insurance, rent due in 4 days, and exactly $73 in my bank account. The clinic I've been going to is free, but even they can't help me if I go into premature labor without proper documentation. I can't afford to be weak. I can't afford to be human right now. I just need to be a translator for 2 more hours, and then I can fall apart on my own time. The words hit Mark like physical blows. $73. Rent due. No insurance. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because you wouldn't have let me stay. Faith straightened, her hand falling from her back despite the pain that still flickered across her face. You would have done what everyone else does, looked at my belly, assumed I was fragile, and sent me away for my own good. But here's the thing about people like me, Mr. Davidson. We don't get to be fragile. We get to be strong, or we get to be homeless. Mark had been raised in Manhattan penthouses, had attended schools where the parking lot held more wealth than most people saw in a lifetime. He'd built his empire understanding money, markets, and the leverage of power. But standing in this corridor, looking at Faith Martinez's determined, terrified face, Mark realized how little he actually understood about what it meant to need something. The baby, he said quietly, is the father, not in the picture. Faith's voice went flat, emotionless. And before you ask, no, he's not coming back. No, there's no family waiting in the wings to help. No, I'm not looking for a handout or sympathy. I'm looking for a paycheck I earned by being excellent at what I do. A door opened behind them. Mark's assistant appeared, looking frantic. Sir, Mr. Wei is asking for you both. He's ready to discuss the final terms. This was it. The moment Mark had been building toward for 18 months. Everything he'd sacrificed, every bridge he'd burned, every relationship he'd destroyed in pursuit of this deal, it was all waiting on the other side of that door. He looked at Faith. Really looked at her. She was terrified, exhausted, in pain, and still standing. We are going back in there, Mark said slowly. But we are doing this my way. At the first sign that something's wrong, and I mean the very first sign, you will tell me immediately. No arguments. No tough-it-out nonsense. You will prioritize your health and that baby's health over this deal. Are we clear? Faith stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. You're willing to risk $300 million on my health. I'm willing to not let a pregnant woman risk her life in my building for any amount of money. Mark's voice was harder than he intended. I may be a bastard, but I'm not that kind of bastard. So either we do this safely, or we don't do it at all. For a long moment, Faith just looked at him. Then, slowly, she nodded. They returned to the dining room together. The negotiation continued. Faith translated with the same precision as before, but now Mark watched her like a hawk. Every shift in her posture, every subtle wince, every breath that came a little too quick, he catalogued them all. Mr. Wei was discussing the timeline for integration when it happened again. Faith's eyes went distant, unfocused. Her hand moved to her stomach, fingers pressing against the fabric of her dress. This time she didn't stop translating, but her voice wavered, the words coming just a fraction slower. Mark made the decision without thinking. Mr. Wei, I apologize, but I need to request a brief recess. Mark stood, his tone brooking no argument. Please, enjoy the dessert and coffee. We'll resume in 15 minutes. Through Faith's translation, Mark could hear the confusion in Mr. Wei's response. A recess now, during the most critical phase. Please tell Mr. Wei that I have the utmost respect for his time and his business acumen, Mark said, his eyes never leaving Faith's pale face. And it is precisely because of that respect that I refuse to rush through the most important part of our agreement. Great partnerships are built on patience and proper attention to detail. 15 minutes will allow us both to review the terms with the care they deserve. Faith translated, her voice stronger than Mark expected. Whatever was happening, she was fighting through it. Mr. Wei studied them both with sharp, knowing eyes. When he responded, his tone had shifted. There was something almost amused in it. Faith translated, Mr. Wei says that in his experience, the most successful businessmen are those who know when to pause. He appreciates your thoroughness and agrees that important decisions should never be rushed. He will enjoy the dessert your chef has prepared. The moment they were out of the dining room, Faith's professional facade cracked. I think something's wrong. The words were quiet, almost whispered, but they hit Mark with the force of a scream. What kind of wrong? The contractions aren't stopping. They're getting closer together. And there's pressure. More than before. Her hand pressed low on her belly, her face twisted with fear and pain. This isn't Braxton Hicks. Mark's phone was out before she finished speaking. I'm calling an ambulance. No. Faith grabbed his wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. If an ambulance comes, Mr. Wei will know something's wrong. The deal will fall apart. You'll lose everything because of me. I don't care about the deal. Yes, you do. Faith's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I've seen the way you look at those contracts. This isn't just business to you. This is personal. This is your legacy. I am not going to be the reason you lose that. And I am not going to let you give birth in my office building to save a business deal. They stared at each other, two stubborn wills colliding in a corridor that suddenly felt too small. Please, Faith whispered. Just let me finish. Let me do this one thing right. Let me prove I'm worth something before. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to, before I lose everything, before I fail, before the world confirms what I already fear about myself. Mark recognized that fear because he'd lived it. Every day of his life, trying to prove he was more than his father's disappointment, more than the privileged trust fund kid who'd inherited success rather than earned it. 5 minutes, Mark heard himself say. You go to the restroom, you sit down, you breathe. I'll go back in there and tell Mr. Wei we are reviewing some final details. 5 minutes, and then we are getting you medical attention whether the deal is done or not. Understood. Faith nodded, relief and determination warring on her face. She turned toward the restroom, each step careful and measured. Mark watched her go, a sick feeling in his stomach that had nothing to do with business till he returned to the dining room alone. Mr. Wei looked up as Mark entered, his expression unreadable. Before Mark could speak, the old man said something in rapid Chinese. This time, without Faith to translate, Mark caught only a few words. But the tone was clear, concerned. Mark's response was honest. I don't speak your language, Mr. Wei, and I apologize for that. But I think you can understand what I'm about to say regardless of translation. He pulled out his phone, opened the translation app, crude and imperfect compared to Faith's artistry, and typed carefully. The translated text was clumsy, but the meaning came through. My translator is pregnant and unwell. I am concerned for her health. I believe this is more important than our business. Mr. Wei read the text. His weathered face showed no reaction. Then he stood. For a moment, Mark thought the deal was over. Thought he'd just destroyed everything with honesty and sentiment and the kind of weakness his father had always warned him about. But Mr. Wei didn't leave. Instead, he walked to Mark, placed one hand on his shoulder, and spoke. His words were incomprehensible, but his tone was warm, almost fatherly. Then Mr. Wei pulled out his own phone and typed his own message. Mark read it, and something in his chest loosened. In China, we have a saying, a business built on the suffering of others will never prosper. Your concern for your employee honors you. Let us finish this negotiation tomorrow, when your translator is well. It was more than Mark had dared hope for. But before he could respond, before he could even process what had just happened, the door burst open. Mark's head of security stood there, his face pale. Sir, it's the translator. She collapsed. Mark was running before conscious thought took over. He found Faith on the bathroom floor, conscious but barely, her breathing rapid and shallow. One of his female staff members knelt beside her, holding Faith's hand. The ambulance is on the way, the woman said, her voice shaking. She says her water broke. She says it's too early. Mark dropped to his knees beside Faith, his expensive suit absorbing water from the floor without a thought. Hey. His voice was gentler than he knew it could be. Stay with me. Help is coming. Faith's eyes found his, wide and terrified. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I ruined your deal. I ruined everything. You didn't ruin anything. Mark took her hand, feeling how cold her fingers were. Mr. Wei moved the meeting to tomorrow. The deal is still happening. Because I failed. Because I asked him to. Mark squeezed her hand. Because some things are more important than business. My baby. Faith's voice cracked. It's too early. 8 months is too early. I don't have insurance. I can't afford. You don't have to afford anything. The words came out firm, absolute. I've got this. Whatever you need, whatever that baby needs, you have it. That's not negotiable. Why? Tears spilled down Faith's cheeks. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Mark didn't have a good answer. Didn't understand it himself. He only knew that watching this woman fight so hard for so long, watching her stand when she should have fallen, watching her choose dignity over safety, it had changed something in him. Because you walked into my building today and saved my ass when you could barely save yourself, Mark said simply. Consider this returning the favor. The paramedics arrived. Professional, efficient, loading Faith onto a gurney with practiced care. Sir, we need to go now, one of them said. She's in active labor. The baby's coming whether we are ready or not. I'm coming with you. Are you family? I'm her employer. The lie came easily. And I'm responsible for her. The paramedic looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Mark's expression stopped him. They loaded Faith into the ambulance. Mark climbing in behind her dais, they pulled away from Chen Industries Tower, sirens wailing into the Manhattan night. Mark looked down at Faith's frightened face and made a promise he didn't fully understand. You're going to be okay. Both of you. I promise. Faith's hand found his, gripping tight enough to hurt. Don't make promises you can't keep, she whispered. I'm a billionaire CEO, Mark said, attempting a smile. Making impossible promises is kind of my thing. The ambulance raced through the city, and somewhere in the chaos of sirens and fear and the unknown future rushing toward them, Mark Davidson realized something that terrified him more than any failed business deal ever could. He cared not about the deal. Not about his reputation or his legacy or proving his father wronged. He cared about the woman lying on the gurney, fighting to bring life into a world that had been so cruel to her, and that changed everything. The hospital waiting room smelled of antiseptic and desperation. Mark had been in countless boardrooms, negotiated deals worth billions, faced down corporate predators who would have destroyed him without a second thought. But sitting in this plastic chair, staring at the doors that had swallowed Faith Martinez 3 hours ago, he felt more helpless than he ever had in his life. His phone buzzed constantly. His father, demanding to know why the deal had been delayed. His assistant, trying to reschedule tomorrow's negotiation. His board members, each message dripping with barely concealed panic about the merger. Mark ignored them all. Mr. Davidson. He looked up to find a doctor approaching, her expression carefully neutral in that way medical professionals learned. Mark stood, his heart pounding. Is she? Ms. Martinez is stable. The baby is stable. We were able to stop the labor for now, but... The doctor's pause felt like a lifetime. She's on strict bed rest. We're keeping her here for observation, but if we can keep the baby in for another 3 weeks, we'll be in much safer territory. Relief hit Mark so hard his knees almost buckled. Can I see her? Are you family? I'm. What was he? Employer. Stranger. The man whose ambition had nearly killed her. I'm responsible for her. The doctor studied him with knowing eyes. Room 412. But she needs rest, Mr. Davidson. Whatever brought you both to this hospital, it can wait until she's stronger. Mark found Faith's room easily enough. Through the window, he could see her lying in a hospital bed, and 4 in her arm, monitors beeping softly. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile, stripped of the professional armor she'd worn in his office. He knocked softly before entering. Faith's eyes opened, finding him immediately. You stayed. Where else would I be? Anywhere but here. A WN smile touched her lips. You're a billionaire CEO with a company to run and a mega deal to close. Shouldn't you be negotiating or conquering or whatever it is people like you do? People like me. Mark moved to the chair beside her bed, sitting down with a weariness he felt in his bones. You say that like you know people like me. I've worked for people like you. Faith's hand rested on her belly, protective even now. People who see the world as something to be acquired and optimized. People who calculate the value of everything, including human beings. Is that what you think I am? I don't know what you are. Faith's eyes met his. You paid for my hospital stay. The nurse told me. She also told me that you not only paid for my current care, but set up an account to cover my pregnancy, delivery, and 6 months of postnatal care. Why? My baby. Faith's voice cracked. It's too early. 8 months is too early. I don't have insurance. I can't afford. You don't have to afford anything. The words came out firm, absolute. I've got this. Whatever you need, whatever that baby needs, you have it. That's not negotiable. Why? Tears spilled down Faith's cheeks. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Mark didn't have a good answer, didn't understand it himself. He only knew that watching this woman fight so hard for so long, watching her stand when she should have fallen, watching her choose dignity over safety, it had changed something in him. Because you walked into my building today and saved my ass when you could barely save yourself, Mark said simply. Consider this returning the favor. The paramedics arrived. Professional, efficient, loading Faith onto a gurney with practiced care. Sir, we need to go now, one of them said. She's in active labor. The baby's coming whether we are ready or not. I'm coming with you. Are you family? I'm her employer. The lie came easily. And I'm responsible for her. The paramedic looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Mark's expression stopped him. They loaded Faith into the ambulance, Mark climbing in behind her. As they pulled away from Chen Industries Tower, sirens wailing into the Manhattan night, Mark looked down at Faith's frightened face and made a promise he didn't fully understand. "You're going to be okay. Both of you. I promise." Faith's hand found his, gripping tight enough to hurt. "Don't make promises you can't keep," she whispered. "I'm a billionaire CEO," Mark said, attempting a smile. "Making impossible promises is kind of my thing." The ambulance raced through the city, and somewhere in the chaos of sirens and fear and the unknown future rushing toward them, Mark Davidson realized something that terrified him more than any failed business deal ever could. He cared not about the deal, not about his reputation or his legacy or proving his father wronged. He cared about the woman lying on the gurney, fighting to bring life into a world that had been so cruel to her, and that changed everything. The hospital waiting room smelled of antiseptic and desperation. Mark had been in countless boardrooms, negotiated deals worth billions, faced down corporate predators who would have destroyed him without a second thought. But sitting in this plastic chair, staring at the doors that had swallowed Faith Martinez 3 hours ago, he felt more helpless than he ever had in his life. His phone buzzed constantly. His father, demanding to know why the deal had been delayed. His assistant, trying to reschedule tomorrow's negotiation. His board members, each message dripping with barely concealed panic about the merger. Mark ignored them all. "Mr. Davidson." He looked up to find a doctor approaching, her expression carefully neutral in that way medical professionals learned. Mark stood, his heart pounding. "Is she, Ms. Martinez is stable. The baby is stable. We were able to stop the labor for now, but..." The doctor's pause felt like a lifetime. "She's on strict bed rest. We're keeping her here for observation, but if we can keep the baby in for another 3 weeks, we'll be in much safer territory." Relief hit Mark so hard his knees almost buckled. "Can I see her?" "Are you family?" "I'm." What was he? Employer? Stranger? The man whose ambition had nearly killed her. "I'm responsible for her." The doctor studied him with knowing eyes. "Room 412. But she needs rest, Mr. Davidson. Whatever brought you both to this hospital, it can wait until she's stronger." Mark found Faith's room easily enough. Through the window, he could see her lying in the hospital bed, and 4 in her arm, monitors beeping softly. She looked smaller somehow, more fragile, stripped of the professional armor she'd worn in his office. He knocked softly before entering. Faith's eyes opened, finding him immediately. "You stayed." "Where else would I be?" "Anywhere but here." A WN smile touched her lips. "You're a billionaire CEO with a company to run and a megadeal to close. Shouldn't you be negotiating or conquering or whatever it is people like you do?" "People like me." Mark moved to the chair beside her bed, sitting down with a weariness he felt in his bones. "You say that like you know people like me." "I've worked for people like you." Faith's hand rested on her belly, protective even now. People who see the world as something to be acquired and optimized. People who calculate the value of everything, including human beings. "Is that what you think I am?" "I don't know what you are." Faith's eyes met his. "You paid for my hospital stay. The nurse told me. She also told me that you not only paid for my current care but set up an account to cover my pregnancy, delivery, and 6 months of postnatal care. Why?" Mark didn't have an answer. Or rather, he had too many answers and none of them made sense. "You were hurt in my building," he said finally. "On my time. It's my responsibility." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." They sat in silence for a moment, the monitors beeping a steady rhythm. "I need to tell you something," Faith said finally, her voice quiet. "Something you should know before you make any more decisions about helping me." "You don't owe me explanations." "Yes, I do." Faith's hand clenched on the blanket. You need to know what kind of person you're dealing with. You need to know why I'm here. Mark waited. The baby's father is Jason Hartwell. The name meant nothing to Mark for a moment, and then everything. Jason Hartwell, junior executive at Hartwell Industries, one of Chen Industries' biggest competitors. Son of Richard Hartwell, the man who'd spent the last decade trying to destroy Mark's father's legacy and, by extension, Mark himself. I see, Mark said carefully. Do you? Bitterness crept into Faith's voice. I met Jason in Guangzhou. He was there on business. I was his translator. We connected. Or I thought we did. He was charming, attentive, everything I thought I wanted. When the company I worked for relocated and I couldn't follow, Jason said it was fine. Said he'd been planning to transfer back to New York anyway. Said we'd figure it out together. Faith's laugh was hollow. I got pregnant the week before we were supposed to move back together. Jason's response was to change his number and disappear. I tried reaching him through his company. Got legal threats instead. Apparently, I signed some NDAs during our work together that they claim prevent me from harassing members of the Hartwell family. His father sent lawyers. Said if I tried to contact Jason again, they'd destroy me. Mark felt rage building in his chest, hot and fierce. So I came back to New York alone, Faith continued. No job, no connections, no support system. I've been living in a hostel for the last 2 months, taking whatever translation work I could find. Most companies won't hire someone obviously pregnant. Too much liability, too many complications. I've been applying everywhere, including Chen Industries, but no one wants to take a chance on someone they see as a liability. Until today. Until I got desperate enough to barge into your crisis and force you to give me a chance. Faith met his eyes. So now you know. The woman you're helping is carrying the child of your enemy son. The woman you set up with medical care is toxic by association with the one family in Manhattan that's been trying to ruin yours for a decade. Still feel responsible. Mark should have been furious. Should have seen this as the cosmic joke it was, that Faith Martinez had literally been sent into his life by the universe's sense of irony. Instead, he found himself laughing. Tea started as a chuckle and built until he was bent over, shoulders shaking, tears in his eyes from the sheer absurdity of it all. Faith stared at him like he'd lost his mind. I just told you I'm connected to your mortal enemy and you're laughing. I'm laughing, Mark managed to say between gasps, because this is the most perfectly screwed up situation I've ever been in. The translator who saved my life's work is pregnant with a Hartwell baby. The woman I just promised to support is carrying the child of the family that's been trying to destroy me since I was old enough to read a stock ticker. It's... He dissolved into laughter again. It's almost poetic. It's a disaster. It's only a disaster if I care about petty family feuds more than I care about doing the right thing. Mark's laughter faded, his expression turning serious. And here's what you need to understand about me, Faith Martinez. I didn't build my company by following my father's playbook. I built it by making my own rules. And one of my rules is that I don't punish people for other people's sins. Jason is an asshole who abandoned a pregnant woman. That's on him, not you. His family's attempt to silence you? That's on them, not you. You walking into my building today and saving my merger? That's all you. You're insane. Probably. Mark leaned back in the chair. But I'm the kind of insane that just decided to hire a pregnant translator who's connected to my enemies and thinks that's a perfectly reasonable business decision. Faith blinked. What? The job. I'm offering it to you. Officially. Full benefits. Healthcare, maternity leave, the works. You'll work as my personal translator until the baby comes, then take whatever time you need, and return when you're ready. You're serious. I'm always serious about business decisions. Mark pulled out his phone, already typing an email to his HR department. You're the best translator I've ever worked with. You handled Mr. Wei better than anyone I've ever seen. You're professional, skilled, and apparently have nerves of steel since you didn't collapse until after you'd finished your job. Why wouldn't I hire you? Because I'm pregnant with your enemy's grandchild. That makes you sound like a character in a Shakespeare play. Mark hit send on the email. Look, here's the truth. My family's feud with the Hartwells has cost both sides millions of dollars and accomplished exactly nothing except making everyone miserable. I'm not interested in perpetuating that cycle. I'm interested in running a good company and treating people decently. You fit both categories. Tears spilled down Faith's cheeks. I don't understand you. Join the club. I don't understand me either right now. Mark stood, suddenly uncomfortable with the emotion in the room. Get some rest. I'll have my assistant coordinate with the hospital about your ongoing care. When you're cleared to leave, we'll set you up with proper housing. Something safe, with space for you and the baby. I can't accept all this. Sure you can. It's called being employed. People do it all the time. Mark, his name, not his title. The intimacy of it stopped him at the door. Thank you, Faith said simply. I don't know why you're doing this, but thank you. Mark looked back at her, this woman who'd stumbled into his life at exactly the wrong, or exactly the right, moment. You ask me why I'm helping you. The truth is, I'm not entirely sure, but I think. He paused, searching for words. I think I've spent so long focused on building an empire that I forgot what it was supposed to be for. My father Mark stood at the hospital room door, the weight of his own words settling over him like a revelation. My father always told me that business was war, he continued quietly. That every interaction was a battle, every person either an asset or a liability. He built Chen Industries on that philosophy, and it made him rich, but it made him miserable. I spent my whole life trying to prove I could do better than him, be smarter than him, build something bigger. But standing here, looking at you fighting for your baby's life after nearly killing yourself to help me close a deal. Mark shook his head. I realize I've been following his playbook more than I ever wanted to admit. Faith wiped her tears with the back of her hand. So this is about your father issues. Despite everything, Mark smiled. Maybe. Or maybe it's about finally understanding that the empire I've been building is worthless if I have to step over people like you to maintain it. People like me, Faith echoed. Poor, pregnant, desperate. No. People who are brave enough to keep standing when anyone else would have given up. People who walk into a crisis and offer solutions instead of making excuses. People who... Mark trailed off, something shifting in his chest. People who make me want to be better than I am. The silence that followed felt sacred somehow, like they were standing on the edge of something neither of them fully understood. Faith's hand moved to her belly, and her expression softened. The baby just kicked. First time today. I think she knows she's safe now. She? I don't actually know, but I've been calling her she in my head. Hope. That's the name I picked out. Hope Martinez. Not Hartwell. Faith's expression hardened. That family wanted nothing to do with us. They don't get to claim her name. Mark's phone buzzed. His father again, the fifth call in an hour. This time, Mark answered. Dad. Where the hell are you? Do you have any idea what you've done? Wei's people are talking about pulling out completely. The board is in chaos. And I'm hearing rumors that you left the negotiation to play hero with some pregnant. Her name is Faith Martinez, Mark interrupted, his voice ice. And she's the reason the deal is still alive at all. She's also the woman I just hired as my personal translator. Anything else you need to complain about? Silence on the other end. Then, have you lost your mind? Maybe, but it's my mind to lose. Mark looked at Faith, who was watching him with wide eyes. And my company, which I built, not you. So here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow, I'm closing the WAI deal. Then I'm restructuring how we treat employees, especially pregnant women. Then I'm implementing actual parental leave policies instead of the bare minimum we've been doing. And if the board doesn't like it, they can vote me out. They'll do exactly that if you keep making emotional decisions. Then I guess we'll find out if I'm as good at my job as I think I am. Mark's voice was calm, certain. I have to go, Dad. I have more important things to do than argue with you about basic human decency. He hung up before his father could respond. Faith stared at him. Did you just blow up your relationship with your father to defend me? That relationship was already blown up. I just finally admitted it out loud. Mark sat back down in the chair beside her bed. My turn for a confession. You want to know why I really care about this deal with WAI? It's not about the money or the market expansion. It's about proving to my father that I can succeed without becoming him. That I can build something meaningful without sacrificing my humanity in the process. And the moment you collapsed on my bathroom floor, I realized I was failing that test spectacularly. So I'm your redemption arc. You're the wake-up call I didn't know I needed. Mark leaned forward. But this isn't about me using you to feel better about myself, Faith. This is about me finally seeing what should have been obvious from the start, that a company is only as good as how it treats its most vulnerable employees. You shouldn't have had to risk your baby's life to get a job. You shouldn't have had to prove your worth by nearly destroying yourself. And the fact that our system made you feel like you had to? That's on people like me. Faith was quiet for a long moment. I meant what I said earlier. I don't understand you. Billionaire CEOs don't usually have crises of conscience in hospital rooms. Maybe they should. Mark stood again, restless energy pushing him to move. Tomorrow, I'm closing the WAI deal. I'm doing it with you as my translator, assuming you're cleared by the doctors. But we are doing it on new terms. Reasonable hours, breaks when you need them, zero pressure to perform through pain. And if at any point you need to stop, we stop. Deal or no deal. Mark, I mean it, Faith. I'm not interested in building an empire on your suffering. Been there, done that. Turns out it makes me exactly like my father. So we do this right, or we don't do it at all. The doctor appeared in the doorway, looking stern. Mr. Davidson, Ms. Martinez needs rest. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Mark nodded. But before he left, he turned back to Faith one more time. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, we change the world. Or at least our small corner of it. Faith smiled, real and genuine. You're completely insane. So I've been told. Mark grinned. See you tomorrow, Faith Martinez. Don't be late to your first official day of work. You're making your translator who's on bed rest come to a business meeting. I'm giving my highly skilled employee the choice to participate in a historic deal if she feels up to it, with full support and accommodation for her health needs. Mark's grin widened. See, I can be both crazy and respectful. It's a gift. He left before she could respond, but he heard her laughter following him down the hospital corridor. 3 months after the WAI deal had closed spectacularly. Mark had restructured his company's parental leave policies, implemented better healthcare coverage, and personally reviewed every employment contract to remove exploitative clauses. The board had grumbled, his father had raged, but the numbers didn't lie. Employee satisfaction was up, turnover was down, and productivity had increased by 15%, and through it all, Faith Martinez had been there. She'd translated 3 more major deals, trained 2 junior translators, and revolutionized how Chen Industries approached international negotiations. She'd also gotten increasingly pregnant, to the point where Mark had finally insisted she take early maternity leave 2 weeks before her due date. Now, Mark stood outside her apartment door, the safe, comfortable place his company had provided, because it turned out treating employees like humans was good for everyone, holding flowers and feeling like an idiot that he'd been visiting regularly, checking on her health, making sure she had everything she needed, telling himself it was just responsible employer behavior. But somewhere between the hospital room and today, something had shifted that he cared about Faith Martinez. Not as an employee, not as a project or a redemption arc, just as Faith. She answered the door looking exhausted and radiant at once, her belly enormous, her smile bright. "Mark, I wasn't expecting you today. I brought food. Actual food, not hospital cafeteria garbage." He held up the bags from her favorite Thai restaurant, the one she'd mentioned loving during one of their many conversations. "And before you argue, you're doing me a favor by eating it. I'm terrible at cooking and I ordered too much." Faith laughed, stepping aside to let him in. "You're a terrible liar, but I'm too hungry to care. Come in." They ate together on her couch, talking about everything and nothing. The way merger was exceeding projections. Mark's father was still furious but had grudgingly admitted the new policies were working. Faith's apartment was filled with baby supplies, some she'd bought, more that had mysteriously appeared from the company. "You know I can see through your schemes, right?" Faith said, gesturing to the expensive crib in the corner. "That's not standard company equipment. Company policy clearly states that all employees get premium nursery furniture." Mark kept his face perfectly straight. "It's in the handbook. Page 247. "Seriously though," Faith said softly, "you've done so much. More than anyone had to. More than I could ever repay." "It's not about repayment." "Then what is it about?" Mark set down his food, the moment suddenly feeling heavier than it should. "Honestly, I think it's about the fact that you walked into my life at exactly the moment I needed to remember why I was doing any of this in the first place. You reminded me that behind every business decision, every contract, every deal, there are actual people with actual lives. You made me want to be better. I didn't do anything except almost give birth in your office building. You survived." Mark's voice was intense. "Despite everything, Jason abandoning you, his family threatening you, being alone in a city with no support system, facing pregnancy with no resources, you kept going. You didn't give up. You didn't quit. You walked into that tower and demanded a chance to prove yourself, even though you were terrified. I was desperate. You were brave." Mark moved closer. "Faith, I've made a lot of money in my life, closed a lot of deals, built a lot of things I'm proud of. But watching you fight for your baby, for yourself, for your dignity, that's the bravest thing I've ever seen." Tears gathered in Faith's eyes. Don't make me cry. I've been crying at everything lately and I refuse to." She stopped, gasping. "Faith." Her hand went to her belly, her eyes going wide. Oh no. "What? What's wrong?" "My water just broke." Faith looked up at him, panic and excitement warring on her face. "Mark, the baby's coming. Right now." Mark had thought business negotiations were stressful, had thought hostile takeovers and board meetings were the ultimate test of his nerves, though he'd been wrong, watching Faith labor, holding her hand through contractions, being her support when she had no one else. That was the most terrifying, exhilarating, meaningful thing he'd ever experienced, and when the baby finally came, tiny and perfect and screaming her arrival to the world, Mark felt something in his chest crack open. "She's beautiful," he whispered. Faith, exhausted and radiant, cradled her daughter against her chest. "Hope. Her name is Hope. Hope Martinez." Mark smiled. "She's going to change the world. She already has." Faith looked up at him, her eyes full of something that made Mark's breath catch. She brought me to you. Faith, I know this is crazy. I know we barely know each other. I know you're my boss and I'm your employee, and there are probably 17,000 ethical problems with what I'm about to say. Faith took a breath. But you've been there for me in ways I didn't think people could be there for each other. You've supported me and believed in me and treated me like I mattered. And somewhere along the way, I started falling for you, Mark finished. I know, because I've been falling for you too. They stared at each other, the baby between them making soft noises. This is insane, Faith whispered. I've been told I specialize in insane. Mark reached out, gently touching Hope's tiny hand. But here's what I know. I know that you're the strongest person I've ever met. I know that you make me want to be better than I am. I know that watching you become a mother is the most incredible thing I've ever witnessed. And I know that I want to be part of your life, if you'll let me. As what? As whatever you want. Friend, partner, support system, hopeless idiot who fell in love with his translator. Mark's smile was crooked, vulnerable. I'm not asking you to make any decisions right now. You just had a baby, you're exhausted, and I'm probably breaking every rule in the employer handbook. But when you're ready, when you've had time to think and breathe and figure out what you want your life to look like, I want to be on the list of possibilities. Faith's tears spilled over. You already are. 1 year at the Chen Industries boardroom had never seen anything like it. Mark stood at the head of the table, Faith beside him, little Hope gurgling happily in her carrier. The board members tried not to stare, but Mark could see their confusion. Gentlemen, ladies, Mark began. I've called this meeting to announce some changes. First, I'm promoting Faith Martinez to Director of International Relations. She'll be overseeing all our foreign negotiations and training our translation department. Murmurs around the table. Faith squeezed his hand. Second, I'm implementing a company-wide policy that all new parents, regardless of gender, get 6 months of paid parental leave. And I'm personally funding daycare facilities in all our major offices. More murmurs, these ones louder. Third, I'm restructuring our executive bonus program to include metrics on employee satisfaction and work-life balance. Turns out, treating people well is actually good for business. Who knew? His father, sitting at the far end of the table, looked like he'd swallowed something sour. But even he couldn't argue with the numbers. Chen Industries had just posted record profits. International expansion was exceeding all projections, and employee retention had never been higher. Finally, Mark said, his voice softening, I want to introduce you to someone. This is Hope Martinez-Davidson. As of yesterday, she's officially my daughter. Faith's engagement ring caught the light as she covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. They'd talked about the adoption, about Mark officially becoming Hope's father, but Faith hadn't known he would announce it like this. I've learned a lot this past year, Mark continued. I've learned that the strongest empires aren't built on ruthlessness or calculation. They're built on giving a damn about the people who make everything possible. They're built on second chances and showing up when it matters and understanding that the most important negotiations happen in hospital rooms, not boardrooms. He looked at Faith, at Hope, at the life they'd built from chaos and crisis and mutual stubbornness. So here's to building something better. Not just bigger, but better. Not just profitable, but meaningful. And not just for us, but for everyone who walks through our doors looking for a chance. The applause was tentative at first, then genuine. Mark's father stood, walked over, and extended his hand. You've surprised me, son. Actually, you've proven me wrong. And that's good. It wasn't much, but it was a start. After the meeting, Mark and Faith stood on the balcony overlooking Manhattan, Hope sleeping peacefully between them. Did you mean what you said in there? Faith asked. About building something meaningful. Every word. Mark wrapped his arm around her shoulders. You changed my life, Faith Martinez. You and this little human showed me what actually matters. And I intend to spend the rest of my life making sure neither of you ever regrets taking a chance on a workaholic CEO with control issues. You forgot reformed workaholic CEO. Faith smiled up at him. With only moderate control issues these days. I'm a work in progress. We all are. They stood there together, watching the sun set over the city. A billionaire CEO who'd learned to care, a translator who'd found her voice, and a baby girl named Hope who'd brought them both home. Sometimes the most important translations weren't between languages after all. They were between hearts, from panic to partnership, from desperation to devotion. Mark and Faith learned that the greatest empires aren't built on ruthlessness. They're built on the courage to show up for each other when it matters most. And sometimes, the person who saves your business deal ends up saving your soul. We really appreciate for taking your precious time watching. Please, before you leave, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment where you are watching from.